Outsourcing email list building to the Philippines, a strategic move for 2025. Why outbound teams are rebuilding list building in 2025. Most outbound teams don't have a list building system. They have a stack of tools, a CRM full of aging records, and SDRs doing research between calls. In 2025, that good enough approach breaks fast because the channel is less forgiving and inbox providers punish sloppy targeting. If our foundation is shaky, every downstream motion, cold email, cold calling services, LinkedIn outreach, and sequencing gets more expensive. The root problem is data decay. B2B contact data deteriorates around 22 to 30% per year, which means a meaningful chunk of last quarter's perfect list is already drifting out of date. When titles change, domains migrate, or contacts leave, teams don't just lose deliverability, they lose relevance, personalization, and trust with prospects. That's why more sales leaders are decoupling expensive selling time from research-heavy work and moving list building into a dedicated function. In practice, the most reliable approach we see is a hybrid model: onshore strategy and segmentation paired with a specialized Philippines team that handles the repeatable work of sourcing, enrichment, verification, and ongoing hygiene. Data quality is now pipeline insurance, not admin work. Cold outbound performance in 2025 is anchored by targeting accuracy. Benchmarks sit around 27.7% opens, 5.1% replies, and roughly 1% meetings booked. And those numbers assume your list is clean and your deliverability is stable. If you're working stale records, you don't just get fewer replies, you train your sending domains to underperform. Poor data quality is also a real P&L issue, not a mild annoyance. Research cited by Landbase estimates poor data costs U.S. businesses about $3.1 trillion in lost value annually, with the average organization losing roughly $12.9 million per year. When we treat list building as grunt work, we're quietly accepting waste in the form of bounces, misfires, and SDR time spent cleaning instead of selling. To make the stakes concrete, here's the reality most SDR agencies and outbound sales agency teams are operating inside today. Why the Philippines is the most practical offshore hub for list building. There are plenty of places to build an outsourced sales team, but list building has a unique requirement. Researchers must understand Western org charts, nuanced job titles, and buying committees. The Philippines consistently performs here because it ranks second in Asia for English proficiency with a high proficiency score, which translates into fewer role mapping mistakes and better judgment on who actually matters in an account. Scale is the second advantage. The Philippine IT BPM industry generated $38 billion in 2024 and employed 1.82 million people, which signals a mature ecosystem for managed operations, training, and process discipline. For sales outsourcing, that matters because you're not just hiring individuals, you're building an engine with predictable throughput and quality controls. Cost efficiency is the third factor, but it's strongest when you use it to buy focus, not to buy the cheapest rows possible. Outsourcing analyses cite up to about 70% labor and operating savings, and the Philippines' wage environment makes it feasible to staff dedicated list-building services rather than forcing SDRs to fit it in. When we treat list building as a specialized function, we get cleaner CRM data and more productive outbound from our cold email agency and cold calling team efforts. How to stand up a Philippines list-building pod without breaking your funnel. The first step is auditing where time is going. For 2 weeks, have reps tag time spent on research and data work versus conversations. If research is north of 20 to 25% of the week, you have a clean operational case for shifting that workload offshore. This is the easiest way to align stakeholders because it reframes the decision as a productivity unlock rather than a headcount debate. Next, design a workflow that's built for daily consumption by SDRs, not monthly CSV dumps. Define a simple SLA from request to delivery, including verification steps and fields required, and set a hard deliverability standard like 2% hard bounces on newly built lists. Then give offshore users controlled access to your CRM and sales engagement platform in a sandbox or least privilege role, so the work lands directly where your SDR agency motion runs. Finally, run a 60 to 90-day pilot tied to pipeline metrics, not vanity volume. Pick one segment, for example, mid-market SaaS in North America, and let the Philippines pod own end-to-end list building for that slice. Then compare meetings and opportunities per 1,000 contacts to your baseline. If your ICP is already documented, most teams can see first useful output in 2 to 4 weeks, with quality compounding as feedback loops tighten. If your SDRs are spending their best hours in LinkedIn and spreadsheets, you don't have a prospecting problem. You have an operating model problem. Quality first execution, the playbook that keeps offshore output revenue adjacent. Most outsourcing disappointments don't come from talent, they come from ambiguity. Before you brief a single researcher, write an ICP playbook that spells out industries, firmographic bands, target geos, common disqualifiers, and the buying committee roles that matter. Pair it with a data dictionary that defines exactly how fields should be captured in your CRM, so VP marketing doesn't become 5 different values and wreck segmentation later. We recommend measuring offshore list builders on revenue-adjacent metrics instead of raw contact volume. Volume-first targets create bloated lists that underperform, while quality-linked KPIs force alignment across sales ops, the list team, and your outbound sales agency execution. Practically, that means tracking match rate to ICP, bounce rate, duplicates, and the funnel outcomes that matter. Positive replies, meetings per 1,000 contacts, and opportunity creation by segment. Cost savings are real, but the strategic win is reallocating expensive time to selling. A Philippines lead generation specialist averages around 29,202 pesos per month, while U.S. SDR compensation is often cited in the $53,000 to $75,000 annual range. So the correct comparison isn't offshore versus onshore, it's research hours versus conversation hours. When you make that shift, your cold calling agency and B2B sales agency programs get more at-bats without increasing rep burnout. Common mistakes and fixes when outsourcing list building. The most common failure pattern is treating offshore as a cheap data vendor. If the instruction is build 10,000 contacts, you'll get 10,000 contacts, often with weak fit, missing context, and inconsistent fields. The fix is to treat the Philippines pod as an extension of sales ops. Train them on examples of good and bad accounts. Review early batches quickly and make why this contact fits a normal part of the output. The second mistake is keeping the team outside the sales stack. When list builders can't see what's being worked, what gets disqualified, and what converts, they can't learn fast, and duplicates explode. Controlled CRM access, clear field-level rules, and a shared QA checklist turn list building from a one-way handoff into a closed-loop system that improves week over week. The third mistake is ignoring compliance and security until late. If you operate in regions touched by GDPR or CCPA, you need clarity on lawful basis, acceptable sources, suppression handling, and least privilege access. Plus, a partner that understands the Philippines Data Privacy Act and how it intersects with global standards. A simple rule of thumb: collect only what you need, encrypt in transit and at rest, and train the team on what do not contact means operationally, not just philosophically. Optimization, combining AI speed with human judgment for better lists. In 2025, the best results come from AI-assisted research, not AI-only research. AI can summarize websites, parse job pages, and propose categories quickly, while human researchers make the judgment calls that protect relevance in niche B2B markets. This AI drafts, humans verify model is how teams scale personalization without turning their cold email agency output into generic, low-trust messaging. Time zone coverage is a hidden advantage when you operationalize it. With Philippines coverage, many teams wake up to refreshed account queues and newly verified contacts, which keeps SDRs in motion during their prime calling and emailing hours. That cadence is especially valuable for B2B cold calling services, where bad numbers waste live selling time faster than almost any other data issue. Here's a practical set of guardrails we use to keep list building tied to outcomes, not just activity. What to do next? Build a hybrid engine that scales through 2025. The most strategic move isn't cheaper list building, it's building a repeatable system where strategy stays close to the market and execution runs at scale. When US-based leaders own ICP, positioning, segmentation, and messaging, and a Philippines pod owns research, enrichment, and data hygiene, you get the best of both worlds, speed and precision. That's the same operating model we see winning across sales outsourcing, pay-per-appointment lead generation programs, and modern outbound sales motions. As you roll this out, keep your success criteria grounded in outcomes. The right question isn't, how many contacts did we add, but did meetings and opportunities per 1,000 contacts improve, and did SDRs spend more time in conversations? If those are true, your list building function is doing its job, protecting deliverability, increasing relevance, and giving your team more selling surface area. At SalesHive, we've built our outbound model around this reality: specialization wins. Since 2016, we've booked 100,000 plus meetings for 1,500 plus B2B clients by combining experienced SDR execution with a serious data engine. And we use automation to amplify, not replace, human research judgment. Whether you run this internally or with a B2B sales agency partner, the direction is clear for 2025. Make list building a dedicated, integrated capability, and your outbound performance becomes far more predictable.